Hi, I'm Woo-Young Chung. I'm the producer for Track B. I'm delighted that you decide to join us for this session. See, I hope you enjoyed the 3 days of our conference. Are you taking a stock over what you have learned? In this session, our distinguished speaker and also co-chair of our symposium will share his view, his insightful view on the lessons learned from this symposium. So without further ado, I pass it on to you, Doc.
Thank you, Wu Young. Great to be with you and great to be with everyone here on the last day of the symposium. It's been a tremendous week. Obviously, many people have articulated that we wish we could all be in person, and I'm sure we will be. Will be next year. But in the meantime, it was kind of fun being able to flip around from one session to another and bounce back and forth pretty readily. I think the platform held up pretty well. A combination of Zoom and Huva, worked pretty well. I'm going to share some of kind of the highlights that folks have sent me, and others that I've kind of gleaned from the materials and the presentations that I've attended. Just to kind of give you a taste for the things that, if you haven't seen them, you might want to dive into and watch the replays and sift through the materials. So let me share my screen here, and then we'll get going. All right, here we go. First, I think it's important for us to acknowledge all of our sponsors. So let's do that. Tremendous who's who of solution providers in the space, from top to bottom. A lot of older and established players who, due to their reputation and continued excellence, have stayed on top, and a lot of other new and emerging technology vendors. So congratulations to everybody, and it's been a great week learning about your solutions and how your customers have implemented them as well. And congratulations to all of you, to everybody who's been attending. A special thanks to Robert and Rich and Steve for putting on such a great show, and to everybody, all the track leads and everyone else involved. An amazing 2,500 attendees at last count that I saw. Just tremendous. I don't know how we're going to squeeze everyone in a room next year. I guess we'll have to figure that out. But hopefully we'll grow from there. So I also want to give a little shout out to those who participated on the platform. And no, you will not win a Turing Award trophy, but you do get a participation trophy, it looks like, for participating. A number of people uploaded photos, so take a look at the photo album. There's some great screenshots of some of the activities and people and slides that were shared. A couple, I don't remember how many, I think there were over 100 or so photos that have been shared already. So next, let me share some of the highlights. Obviously, we started off the week with a presentation by the Archbishop, and as Nino summarized, he sent me the summarization that as part of his speech on a call for AI ethics, he introduced the concept of this allegorical vision, an approach of ethics by design based on 6 principles of a human-centric planet, and to avoid getting controlled by an algorocracy. Easy for me to say, probably sounded a lot better in his Italian accent. So yeah, definitely there was a major theme of the event. Were topics related to ethics, not just algorithmic ethics, but the handling of data and governance and compliance and analytics as well. I think ethics is something that is pervasive and a very welcome topic at long last in data and analytics circles. Next, we moved on to a tribute to Larry English, who we lost last year. The founder of Information Impact and pioneer of the topic of information quality, wrote a couple of just groundbreaking books and developed a methodology called the TIQM, Total Information Quality Management Method, right? I got it. And unfortunately, we lost him last year, but I did a session where, I hope that his ideas continue to continue on, and those who are unfamiliar with him become familiar with him and his work, and those of us who had the pleasure of working with him continue to share his ideas and implement them. Some other things that we saw that kind of caught our attention, again, myself and some others, was a KPMG session on supervising algorithms. So speaking of ethics, it was a really interesting idea here about applying parenting concepts to the way that we supervise algorithms. We often talk about supervised and unsupervised learning, and Srikar here kind of took that idea and ran with it and came up with this idea of applying parenting concepts to it, which I certainly appreciate, because I'm always one for, rather than reinventing a wheel, using existing wheels for new purposes, as I did, in my book. So really interesting session there that you should go back and check. Another great session by Ranjana Young from Cardinal Health, who talked about how consumer data is proliferating, and really the increased availability of external data assets from consumers and healthcare providers is really changing the game in healthcare, not just in the pharmaceutical industry, but across the board. She is the global head of data at Cardinal Health, and actually a good friend of mine. And she's doing just tremendous work there at Cardinal Health to build and implement a data strategy. So definitely check out her work. I think it's a great template for anyone developing an enterprise strategy, whether you are in the pharmaceutical industry or not. Another friend of mine, a former colleague back in the Prism Solution days, Susan Cook, presented with PwC on the challenges and solutions to data ops was their main topic. That's what Zaloni offers. And I love her quote here that there's so much more to a company's digital assets that need to be cataloged, not just its data assets. I think that's something really important for everyone to keep in mind. I know there's the emerging concept of analytic governance, but it's not something that as many companies are doing as they are doing data governance. And I think the concept of data governance, data cataloging, yes, ought to be expanded to all digital assets, not just data. So a great idea there from Susan and her co-presenter. Gabriel at Novartis also, like Cardinal Health, presented on trends in the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, talking about that there's really this crisis in the ability of pharmaceutical companies to better leverage their data in increasing the R&D returns. That R&D returns have dropped significantly. They're struggling to develop breakthrough strategies for therapies, and the willingness of healthcare providers and insurers to pay for expensive therapies is declining. So he talked about what that crisis is and how we might leverage data to mitigate it. A great session from Sadie Lawrence on women in data. She presented with Nino on that. Great organization that recommend you get familiar with and even involved with. It's been growing significantly over the last several years. I don't pronounce French very well, but Kathy Doss at the Federal Reserve did a really interesting piece. Again, I love analogies, where she talked about this, I think it's called mise en place, which is a French culinary phrase, which means having everything in its place in a commercial kitchen, so that the chef can be much more efficient. And she applied that to the way that we manage data today, and how it's very possible to apply this concept to ensure that all of the data is prepared, available, and that all the ingredients are there when we need them to do analytics. A really interesting session by her that I recommend you check out. My former colleague at Gartner, Lydia Clarity Jones, did an annual recounted the findings from Gartner's 6th annual CDO survey that I used to be involved in myself. Really interesting to see how the role has evolved over the years. And her presentation was just a wealth of insights on the challenges and opportunities and trends related to the CDO's role. The way that Gartner runs these surveys is they develop a set of hypotheses and then questions to test those hypotheses. So it's which I think is a way that any organization should do analytics, let alone analyze the analytics industry. So really interesting work by her. Lydia did just a great job articulating it and presenting it, and really proud to have worked with her and know her as well. Another person who's been studying the role of the CDO for years is Randy Bean at NewVantage Partners, and he rolled out his annual survey. I'm not sure how many years he's been doing it, but it looks like here 5 or 6. I don't know how many years. It goes back to 2012, so maybe it's almost 10 years or more. But interesting to see here that the appointments of the CDO has risen from 57% to 65% this year. A little bit of a drop last year, so maybe he explained this data in his session. I didn't get to see it all, and that we're starting to see CDOs with greater responsibility. Probably still not enough. One of the things that I found in my research, and I presented at this event last year, is that there really are 2 types of CDOs. There's the CDO who's really got a seat at the table as a true executive, and a CDO that really what I refer to as a CDO light, who is in more of a kind of a strategy and advisory kind of role, but doesn't have a seat at the executive table. So it is still kind of disappointing to see that really only 13-14% of CDOs have revenue responsibility today. I think that's a real kind of a travesty. We have seen that the primary focus of the CDO has shifted from being defensive oriented to offense oriented. This is why things like data literacy and data monetization were such hot topics at this event. CDOs are really all over the topic of generating more value from their data and enabling the organization culturally. I think those were 2 major themes that we heard about this week. McKinsey also shared some of their data here about the use of external data, and they shared other findings as well. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of increase in the leveraging of external data assets and alternative data. There are a variety of data places to get data from. Those include public data sources, probably 10 million or so public data sources published by government organizations worldwide. Most organizations have dozens of partners that they can exchange data with. There's billions of social media posts that can be harvested. There's billions, or I think 1 trillion now, websites with data that can be harvested. And there's a lot of dark data within organizations that goes unutilized. So I think it's really important for organizations to have what I call a data curator, somebody who is in that role to identify potentially valuable data assets, figure out what that value is and how to get access to them. I think it's a damn shame that most organizations have somebody who's like responsible for procuring office supplies and absolutely nobody responsible for procuring data supplies in the organization. So definitely check out Mohammed's session as well. Michael and Peter, the leads of the International Society of CDOs, talked about among other things, the failure of the academic world in researching and enabling future data and analytics leaders. So there are a lot of things that they're not taught that they should be. Some research that I did a number of years ago found that about 97% of MBA programs include a class on analytics, but only 3% include a class on data management. So, we're graduating an entire generation of future business and technology leaders who have the ability to manage people and processes and numbers, but not data. And even if we're only in the early stages of the data age or the information age, that's really problematic. Some of you know, and I talked about the class that I teach at University of Illinois. I'll share a little bit about that in a bit. But yeah, definitely check out Peter and Michael's session as well. Ravi at Denodo talked about data warehouses and data lakes, and the middle ground there, the data lakehouse. There were several interesting sessions on the data lakehouse. I think we're probably starting to kind of evolve what that term really means and add some legitimacy to it. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to look at traditional data warehouses or building data lakes, or even hybrid logical data stores as well. So I think the message here is to become architecturally circumspect about what is the right type of architecture for your organization and circumstance, and how you want to grow, and what that vision is. Yesterday I think he talked about Hadoop was all the rage, right? And today where is Hadoop? It's still hanging around, but it's not at the forefront of most of the forward-looking architectural decisions that organizations are making. Jay at Alidata talked about the overall project management governance and platform. He's got a really interesting presentation with lots of great charts in it on kind of an overall message and methodology for not just data governance, but overall enterprise governance when it comes to data and analytics. Some interesting, and definitely check out Jay's book as well. Usama, always very interesting and controversial. Great quote from him around that our progress in AI and machine learning has been dismal. I actually watched this session and picked up this quote. He likened our ability to build models to not having evolved from the 1950s, where he mentioned a certain checkers playing application. He said most of the advanced analytic capabilities in AI and ML are just kind of offshoots of that original approach. And most AI and machine learning implementations are all very narrow in context and can't handle changes in context very, very well. I don't know if he mentioned this or someone else mentioned it, but where is IBM Watson today? Data Kitchen did another talk about data ops. There were several talks on data ops from Data Kitchen and Zaloni and others. Interesting quote here from Chris, the CEO, that a lot of companies have their head in the sand. They don't want to know how many errors their data has, which are typically due to a lack of data ops. Steve Orr at Intel was talking about real-time AI. And an interesting quote from him here is that enabling real-time AI requires computing, sensors, and other technologies that are commensurate with the size, speed, and usage requirements of the devices where they're deployed, which makes perfect sense, but architecturally and technically is easier said than done. So it's good to see Intel on top of this and recognizing that the future of AI and real-time analytics is going to be at the edge, and that they need to produce devices, not just general purpose sensors and computing chips that, but rather ones that are more purpose driven. Justin at AIC, SAIC talked about enterprise data governance and an interesting concept that I'm not sure if they developed it, but he talked about positive data control being this next generation method to assign authority and control to the management of data and other data assets. So interesting concept. I haven't got to see the whole presentation, but I'm definitely going to go back and check that out. I think the data governance world is ripe for some new ideas and expanded methodologies for sure. Andy Palmer at Tamer gave an interesting presentation as well, and he talked about the appreciation for clean data and building trust around data has never been higher. And that we can't just go out and survey people on how they like their data, but we need to do things to improve the quality and utility of data, and then circle back with them. So it's got to be more of an agile process with a feedback loop as part of that. Another always fun and controversial speaker, Michael Stonebreaker, now at Tamer, talked about data silos and how to resolve and mitigate data silos. Gave an interesting talk here with some bullet points that I found particularly interesting on, how do we integrate data silos and what does that entail? From transforming to cleansing to enrichment to classification and entity resolution and so forth. Maria, another great speaker here at SAP, gave a really master class in effective data strategy. This is just one of her, just her summary slide, but she went into some just great detail. There aren't many people out there that I know who have run more effective data strategy and data governance organizations than her. So definitely check out her session as well. In addition to Gartner and McKinsey, IDC was in the house with a survey that they did on data ops and some interesting findings here on how improving productivity and data quality and reducing errors are the top three drivers of data ops, but they certainly do run the gamut. We saw some sessions on interesting technologies and the application. Yes, we have self-driving cars, and now we have self-driving boats. So Lero Lindborg shared a really interesting session on the technologies and capabilities and future of self-driving shipping vessels. There was some talk about data intelligence and kind of some different perspectives about what data intelligence means. This one from Blake Brannon at OneTrust gave a really interesting session highlighting and detailing the four kind of steps toward data intelligence, that it's not just about, governing your data and using your data, but you have to kind of know what it is up front. I probably would have liked to seen something here about valuing data as part of knowing your data, as would the folks I presented with at YDC, your data connect. But a really interesting approach here and more of a comprehensive approach than we see in a lot of organizations. Another friend of mine here, Ivan Herrero at Peru, in Peru at Intercorp. He is probably one of the preeminent CDOs who is dealing with a conglomerate organization. Intercorp, I think, has 30 or so different businesses, ranging from real estate to movie theaters to banks. And he has embarked on a long-range mission, a very patient guy, a long-range mission to raise the level of not only data literacy, but data capabilities throughout the organization, and do so in a way that doesn't really leave any of the constituent companies behind. He gave a really obviously interesting talk as well. And so any of you who are with a super large organization or any kind of conglomerate, you definitely want to check out his presentation. I also love here at the bottom where their new platform, the Intercorp Customer Analytics Program, is called Inca. Hopefully you get the pun. I gave a new session. I've given the talk on infonomics for the last couple years. And this year I decided to give more of a talk on advanced infonomics, really the economics part of infonomics. Luckily, I had a large team of students in my MBA class, my infonomics MBA class this year. It grew from 12 students a couple years ago to 60 students last year to over 400 registered students at the beginning of the class this year. And one of the assignments I gave them was to apply economics to data assets rather than to traditional goods and services as they were originally intended. And there's some really interesting papers and ideas that they all came up with. And you'll hear just a few of them, both from my book and also from some of the papers that they wrote. I'm hoping to put all of their papers into a compendium. I'm trying to get approval from the university to do so. But if you're interested in how to apply the various economic concepts, both micro and macroeconomic concepts, to data in driving the future of your organization, you might want to check out this session. And then finally, probably the session that I thought was far and away the most interesting and eye-opening and eye-popping was that from Davin Crowley-Sweet at Highways England. He shared how they used data valuation methodologies to determine that the value of their data assets at Highways England were equivalent to half the value of the company's tangible assets. And rather than sharing a bunch of slides from one slide from his presentation, I took copious notes and shared a number of his tidbits. his journey has taken him from working with the chief financial officer to saying, listen, I understand data is not a balance sheet asset, but in order for us to get full value from our data and manage it appropriately, we need to understand what that value is. And in doing so, he's not only been able to use data's value to justify business cases. In fact, he mentions that that's just secondary, that being able to articulate and demonstrate that the value of their data is in the billions, they've been able to get a seat at the table. He says his data team, have gone from, he says, wondering whether they'll get invited to a meeting to now chairing the meetings. And it's a chilling shift. It gives me kind of goosebumps in shifting an organization from really not even appreciating what data they have or what its value or potential value is, to realizing that the value of the company's data is a significant asset. Many of you probably are familiar with how the airlines in the midst of COVID stayed aloft by collateralizing the value of their customer loyalty programs and customer loyalty data to the tune of evaluations that were 2 to 3 times multiples of the market value of United and American Airlines. There's a lot of valuable data in your organization, and both at Highways England here, and then a talk which I didn't have time to add into the mix here from Your Data Connect, which showed how to create a data balance sheet. I thought were tremendously interesting sessions, and definitely go back and check out. I'd say if there's one session to go back and check out, it's Davin's session on how to really turn the culture of an organization by valuing the data assets. He didn't know I was in the room. He said something really, really nice at the end. I got to share. He said, the most important, he actually used the Infonomics kind of methodology and to value their data. And I've been tracking, his progress over the years. And actually wrote a piece on his efforts in Forbes recently. But he didn't know I was attending the session. And he commented that the most valuable piece of information that they have at Highways England is a copy of the Infonomics book. So that was really nice of him to say. I got to order him a pizza or something and send it to him. All right, so let's move along. Some of the best infomercials. I did not check this URL to see if Ask Spray is an actual product. At least I'm not admitting to actually checking that URL. But let's move on to the top infomercials. So top infomercial was, let me refer here, Ab Initio topped out Accenture and Databricks as the top infomercial in that poll. In the second poll, Informatica and PwC were faraway runners. Congratulations to them. And in poll number 3, SAP far and away above Zaloni and Your Data Connect, but all great advertisements, and a credit to those vendors, and obviously thank everybody for participating. Let's move to the rest of the polls. So where does the chief officer sit in an organization? Often on the floor shaking their head, yes. But still, most chief data officers seem to be reporting to the CIO, but increasingly to the CEO. We like to see that. That means that they've got a real seat at the table. I just don't understand any organization that has the chief data officer reporting to the chief technology officer. And I've actually tweeted about that when I saw some organization, hiring for someone to report to the CTO. A bit confusing to me and others, I think. Is data an asset or a liability? Far and away, data is an asset. Probably this reflects that most people understand that a liability is something that someone owes to someone else. And in that context, rather than the common vernacular of a liability being a risk, it's appropriate to acknowledge that data is not, or never, or rarely ever an actual accounting liability. We just need to be careful how we're using this kind of vernacular. If you're talking common vernacular, an asset is something of a benefit and a liability something as a risk, great. But make sure that you're you let people know that you're talking that way. When we start mixing the concept of an asset and as something of value and a liability as a risk, we're mixing and matching vernaculars that shouldn't be. So let's just be very clear about when we're using the term asset and liability. A word cloud that was created based on the one or two words on how to build a sustainable driven culture. Far and away, data literacy and accountability were the top ones. Education falls under data literacy. So there's no question that data literacy is the runaway leader in how to create a data-driven culture in an organization. There's a question here about how to use the use of high-frequency data, and most organizations are still kind of using it in a limited way. And that's fine. There's a lot of companies that aren't in the business of having to make decisions on a real-time basis, depending on their industry, and so that's perfectly understandable. As far as data strategy goes, what was the question here? Do you have a well-articulated data strategy? So still, most organizations don't have a well-articulated data strategy. Now, I don't know whether that means they don't have a data strategy or just hasn't been articulated well. I would imagine there's a little bit of both. So if you do have a data strategy, try to articulate it better. And if you don't, it's definitely time to create one. It guides project decisions. Yeah, so kind of still none of the above when it comes to do you have a well-articulated data strategy. There's still a lot of work to be done here. I think a lot of organizations still tend to fixate on architecture and technologies and the bright shiny objects rather than making data strategy part of the overall enterprise strategy. A quote from the CIO at Hershey's, who I once spoke with, and he said, "Listen, I'm trying to get across to the organization that we are a data company that just happens to make confections." Again, maybe a little bit overboard, a little bit hyperbolic, but it's a fun quote, and the sentiment is well received. Do you currently demonstrate ROI from your data and analytics investments? We plan on it. Of course, everybody plans on it, but some have said yes. I think that's a real problem right now, that that organizations are still, that yes column should be in the 80 to 90% range, I think. The problem is that feedback loop and ensuring that you're measuring the value of data and the benefits of your analytics. Too many companies are happy building a pretty pie chart or a bouncy bar chart and sending it off to their business users and not really asking, okay, what are you doing with it and how has it changed your business? Those are important questions to ask and ensure that the users are prepared to answer on an ongoing basis. In terms of sponsorship, what sponsorship do you have relative to your data strategy? Good to see that we have executive sponsorship for most data strategies, but still a lot of organizations without any sponsorship whatsoever. In terms of compliance, good to see highly compliant organizations when it comes to data. And then in terms of data and digital civil rights, which I didn't hear this session, so I'm not exactly sure exactly what they were talking about there. But it's good to see that we as data people are taking into consideration global perspectives on human rights as part of what we do. So that's about all I had for you. Great seeing as many people as I could, as many sessions as I could. I'm definitely going to go back and watch a lot more, and hope to see everyone next year. I'll be on the program committee again, and so if you're interested in speaking and didn't get a chance to speak this year, definitely hit us up soon with your ideas for either panel discussions or sessions. And myself and all of the track leaders will be happy to work with you. Probably starting in the late fall or winter months on your sessions, so that they're not a last minute endeavor. So again, congratulations to everybody who presented, and thanks to all of you for attending. And I'll take a look, see if there's any questions here. Let's see what we've got here. John asks, AI today, it's still narrow. However, Google's Go, far from just a chess or checkers game. Yeah, but definitely applying the same kind of what I think was referred to as I forgot the term he used. Anyway, it's using the same kind of same kind of methods, but expanding on them and throwing a lot more horsepower at it. So again, I didn't see the whole session, so I encourage you to go back and take a look. Well, Young, any other questions?
Oh, sorry, I was actually listening to you from a Huba platform, and there was a
Oh, is it
little
got a bit of
delay.
a delay?
Yeah,
Right.
so I apologize for
Yeah,
that.
no worries, no worries.
No, I think I posted all the questions from the Huba to your chat
Okay.
window, so that's all we had
All right.
at this
Well,
time.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So I think we should we wrap it up,
Let's
or
wrap it
how
up.
would you like do you have any last comment, or hey, I think what's
No, listen, I think we'd love to hear from everyone as to what kinds of topics you'd like next year, not just the panelists and the presenters, but from everyone. So definitely reach out to Rich or Steve or Robert or me on what kind of topics you'd like to hear more about. Would you like more case studies, or more vendor demonstrations, or would you like a vendor bake-off, or would you like more on strategy? I think that some of the polls that we took here are going to be telling, like how few organizations have a well-articulated data strategy. So maybe we should go into have some sessions on how to create a data strategy and do so collaboratively with the business, and how to articulate it and communicate it as well. I think data ethics and literacy are going to continue to be hot topics. I think data monetization is definitely picking up steam as more organizations realize that it's not just about selling your data, but about generating measurable economic benefits from your data, and how you go about measuring that. Maybe we'll see some movement from the accounting profession, although I don't hold out a lot of hope on valuing data as part of the balance sheet. We did hear a little bit about collateralizing data as one method of generating value from it. I talked in my session about the inverted data monetization approach to monetizing your customer data in a way that doesn't expose it or violate any privacy regulations. So maybe we'll get into that a little bit more as well. And I don't know, a lot of interesting topics, I'm sure, and I'm sure there'll be some new technologies on the horizon that we can all talk about next year as well.
Great.
And new surveys from the research companies, of course.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And also, I'd like to, since you provide us with such a extensive and comprehensive the summary of the whole symposium, I'd like to kind of pose you this question. What would you say would be the best or biggest kind of advice or lessons learned a CDO, Chief Data Officer, should get from this symposium this year, in your view? Well,
I think it's something that we've talked about the last couple of years, and that's about balancing offense and defense, as Tom Davenport and others refer to it. And so, I saw a shift from playing defense to playing offense this year. Maybe a bit of a pendulum swing, but we'd like to see that a little bit more balanced next year. And probably more about treating data as an actual asset by applying asset management principles and practices. We really haven't gotten much into that. We talk about data governance, and there was a little bit of talk about applying some asset management concepts, but I definitely would like to see more about that, and I'll take it upon myself to do so as well, because I did write about it in my book, but it's something I'd like to expand upon. How do we take ideas from physical asset management, from financial asset management, from human capital management, and apply that to the way that we're managing data, rather than making up new methods all the time.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And we do really appreciate your contribution and participation for year after year. Uh, Thank you very much. And also, I'd like to thank all the audience who participated or attended this session. And this is actually as a sort of programming note, this is a kind of a last regular session of this symposium. So I'd like
I think
to
I'm frozen.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you. And oh, I think on a program note, there's a town hall meeting. This is not the regular session. This is the last one, but this is not the last session of the symposium. The last session will be the actual town hall. I believe it is going to be at
Mhm.
6 o'clock, right? I believe it's.
5:40.
Oh, is it starting at 5:40 earlier?
People can sign in as early as 5:40 if they'd like. It's
Oh,
very informal.
oh, okay. Okay. So please, I encourage everyone to attend. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's also a photo shoot of, everyone who attended. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to attend the last, our town hall meeting. Um, I just want to say, as a track producer, and also, the 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 member of a MIT CDOIQ program, I'd like to thank everyone who attended this symposium. Thank you.